wait and see what happens. But to speak about some of these issues and more, we've got Dr. Okey who joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Let's start off from the several briefings now that the PTF on COVID-19 have had. Now, from that onto what you see on the streets, perhaps you could add to that the perspective of the governors who have also given certain directives in terms of what they want to see. Do you get a picture, maybe a clear picture of what we want to achieve with this, where we're headed, where we are, the challenges we're facing? Do you see that looking at it from a distance?
Well, I see several pictures. The first picture, if you like, since we're using pictures, is that we have a situation which nobody really knows what to do about. The Center for Disease Control, throughout the period of the peak attempt to manage this pandemic, has been clearly overstretched. Very much so. The security agencies put out in the street have also, you and your colleagues refer to the challenge connected with it, but we are seeing it. Now, what we have on the table is a situation that nobody for now knows how to control. In an environment where hunger is driving a lot of people out of their houses, and where also the degree of public education that should take place has not taken place. And in all the conversations so far, we've heard of Governors Forum, we've heard of the federal government and CDC, we are pretending that Nigeria does not have lawmakers who have a responsibility to their constituents. And I've had cause to talk about this before. You blame the Minister of Information, NCDC, and several agencies about briefing Nigerians, and I ask myself, if you say that young boys are rioting in Ojuelegba, or that some people are protesting in Kano or some other places, is it true that those places have people who represent them in the state houses of assembly? The answer is yes. Are there local government chairmen? Yes. Are there ward chairmen? Yes. Are there councillors? Yes. Are there senators? So when will their job as leaders begin? You find that if really you have the institutions of state, judiciary, executive, and the legislature, that's different from the instruments for governance that constitute the governance structures, which include that if I'm a lawmaker, I have a constituency office, and from time to time, I will go and consult with my people. And if a situation like this has developed, it will be my business to go to them and say, listen, this is what you should do, or this is what you should not do. It is not happening. So let's not kid ourselves. The cocktail of, if you like, leaders and efforts are not being put in place. Having said that, we now come to the public domain. What we've seen right from the beginning of the lockdown is what you might call another money-making opportunities for some people who are supposed to check it. You refer to the checkpoints. Yes, we hear of it. We've seen some of the tapes. We know of a state that was presumably under lockdown with a bridge, not accessible to transporters. But you get there, there's a definite toll you pay, not to the government, and you pass. The other places where this did not apply, you get there, you get down from your vehicle, you cross the bridge at a lower fee, and then board a vehicle on the other side. All of that aside, the core issue is that it is our lives as individuals that is at stake. It is our responsibility to guard our lives and advise those around us. It is irresponsible to expend all our energies condemning the authorities when in fact what you call the authorities are individuals like you and I who also are clearly not well equipped to handle this. And you look in all of this, what do you find? A state that, let's leave all the previous years, that in 20 years under a more liberal political environment was unable to do a single thing that will guarantee its survival as a nation state in the 21st century. Hospitals are bad where they exist. There are no roads, there's no electricity. Human capital development is poor, so we don't have enough. All of that is staring us in the face today. And on all the headings under which we've spent massive sums of money in the last 20 years, the score is below 20% in all of them. This is a time for recalibration. So on the substantive matter of the COVID thing, the more recent briefings suggest clearly what is before every other nation. So let's not just start jumping around and saying that the NCDC has failed. So has all the others in the world. Nobody knows what to do. Yes, people are rioting, I think, in some part of Kanu and protesting. There's also riot in Ohio, and it began before the ones here. People need to be properly briefed so that they know it's their life. You also have the challenge, of course, posed by superstition and many uninformed pastors and imams who tell you that, it is not your portion and the rest of it. And I ask myself right now, why don't we have these pastors who have been going around threatening people with prosperity and expect you to heaven? Why are they not doing it anymore? Why are they not looking for who to lay hands on? Why is it that all of a sudden the sale of anointing oil, all of a sudden anointing is no longer so popular? But anyway, all of that on the side. The issue on the table right now is that we face a situation that has come down to a slight release in the lockdown. That release in the lockdown poses a danger we must be aware of. Number one,
one moment before you go on, Dr. Okey, before you go on, there was something you mentioned the other time. I'd like you to give us a little more perspective on it. So on the one hand is the issue of COVID-19 that the world is grappling with, and Nigeria no less, and each individual is expected to take personal responsibility in the light of the ease of the lockdown. On the other hand is that which drove them out of home in the first place, which you also mentioned, is hunger. It would seem like one is stronger than the other. How do you expect the people, how do you suggest that people should go about this, despite all that, as you said, government has been doing?
I do not suggest anything about how they should go about it. I am first of all mentioning that the reality of a badly managed state is what has led to where we are. For years, for decades, we've had graduates without jobs. For decades, we've not allowed vocational schools to be in existence. And therefore, what would develop people across various cadres of service delivery have not worked. Right now, there is a lockdown. In what environment do you have a lockdown? An environment where a lot of people have to go out in the morning every blessed day in order to eat. Either as conductors, tricycle drivers who rotate, shoemakers, plumbers, vulcanizers, and then those who work in the office, they are sure of their salary, but they sell things on the side. Those who sell vegetables, on a daily basis, they must go out to eat. All of a sudden, it stops. You're on your own if you're telling them to be of good behavior. Self-preservation is a law of nature, but hunger could also have a compelling effect where the absence of food as a threat to life becomes a basis for actions that could be classified under self-preservation. What am I saying? We've heard of reports, and people describe them as miscreants, irresponsible area boys, and angry youths in Lagos and several other places, and my response has been consistent. These are not angry youths. These are not necessarily irresponsible boys and girls or miscreants, because if they had something to do, you won't see them in the street. So let's disaggregate. Many of them are, first of all, hungry, unemployed, unemployable young men and women. Unemployed because you have some who actually have some skills but no opportunity to deploy it for survival. Unemployable among them because you have people who have neither education nor skill that could earn them a living. But while there was no lockdown, they could all be scraping around and getting by, making a nuisance of themselves occasionally, pickpocketing where and there. All the opportunities have dried up. So even by the wrong social classification of these people who are in the streets, we are not thinking of containment. We are thinking of criminality. Meanwhile, it's the failure of the state that has criminalized them. In their upbringing, they were not educated on citizenship. They are not part of the economic safety net. Nothing. And then suddenly their income disappears. And you take it a little further, there have been interventions, ostensibly to very poor families all over the country and poor persons. And you notice that many banks, many wealthy individuals and companies have did donate a lot of billions to the federal government. And I ask myself, a bank that has had you as a customer for 20 years, for 4 years, for 3 months, for 30 or 40 years. There's a lockdown. This is the time to show appreciation and also commend you. Takes money and gives to the federal government, but they have your account number. A federal government that has been struggling to bring everybody into the, if you like, the technology-enabled banking sector and the economy, compelled you to have your BVN. A lot of people now are captured within the financial record system. That federal government wants to distribute money. It doesn't give incentives. It's trying to prevent you from carrying cash, but it wouldn't give you incentive, because this would have been the best time to incentivize those who have.
But let me jump in and ask you,
contemporary
are you suggesting that, for instance, in the case of the banks, is it that they could have reached out or paid some money? What's your point about them reaching out to customers who they've had for several years?
Yes, some of them donated money, contributed money for the fight against COVID. My point is that they could also have made some gesture towards their customers. It would have been it doesn't matter the amount. Look, what all they did, you recall that after the charges for withdrawal were divided by half, many of the banks, if you go to the ATM, instead of withdrawing up to 40,000, they made it a maximum of 10. A particular bank, I don't need to mention the name, managed to be the one that retained that. The moment the COVID lockdown began, it also joined the others. So instead of incentive, it's actually discouraging. So if you're going to now withdraw 40,000, you pay 4 times, whereas before you could pay once, and that's at the peak of the crisis. Okay. The point I'm making being, institutions must make a distinction between what impacts real people and what appears as newspaper headlines in the name of their intervention to help the society. That's actually.
Now, speaking about, in a similar manner, if I could just raise this point, yesterday they also did announce that the ban on flights for airlines has been extended by 4 weeks. But prior to that time, we had a lot of SMEs are reeling under the pressure right now. Many of them saying, look, they need some sort of intervention from the government, and they're not getting that. Whatever monies they've announced, wherever, has not gotten to the SMEs. But in turn, should the government haven't announced an extension for the airlines, even though they say, well, listen, what is it, 17 billion odd monthly? Should they have announced some sort of intervention for the airlines as well? Because that sector is badly hit as well.
There are 2 perspectives on this. Somebody may argue that if you give money to the airlines, you're taking public money and giving private organizations that are already running in billions. But the other perspective and the social responsibility angle which I will take is that if you hit one airline and allow it to go under, you're also allowing not hundreds but thousands of jobs to go under. The loss of those jobs could translate into hundreds of children being out of school, capable young men and women being forced to adopt questionable means of livelihood, etc., with security implications. So my take is quite simple. These are the places and the times when interventions are not only necessary but mandatory. They need to save those organizations, not because they are dashing money to their owners, but because they are saving jobs. So we must develop a perspective that's wide enough to take things into context. That it is not a question of, oh, well, it's hitting everybody, it doesn't matter. Then for the SMEs too, this is also the time many small and medium-scale organizations will be forced to realize that they did not calibrate themselves properly, and so they are not captured. This should be the time for the SMEDAN to bring up its data and see what to do with it. This is the time for the NDE, Nigeria National Director of Employment, if it has been doing anything at all, to show the evidence, so that you then use real inventory. What's the number of staff you have? How are they? What are they doing? One of the countries that has the largest number of SMEs that are thoroughly documented up to, if you have 1 staff, is Algeria. And I recall that when we traveled there, it was unbelievable. You have a house, they're just producing buttons for your shirt. That's all they are producing. The government has their record. Of course, it's a very wealthy nation, small population, a lot of oil money which they are saving. As a person working in a private company belonging to me, when you're on leave, it's the state that pays for you, not me, your employer. But that's El Dorado, really. The point I'm making in respect of your question is that it would be wrong to continue this dashing of cash in the manner it is going. It only falls under consumption. You record that you spent 500 billion, just exaggerating a bit, and people have eaten it up and blown it away within 5 days. The poverty in the place remains. Those who are still sick. Those who have no clothes on their backs, nothing changes, and you keep recording money that has gone under. It's not working. That's why you have to...
Why do you call it dashing? Because isn't that the wrong impression that you'll be giving to people? Because just as you started by saying, look, jobs, you're saving jobs. Would you rather not give that money to even those who need it? Then the consequences will be huge, don't you think?
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't give at all. I'm saying that in giving, you sit down and do a proper calibration of the likely impact. And as often happens when things like this come, people table names and then the money is shared. To ignore the people completely will be wrong. That's why I'm talking, I'm not too happy about what the banks did. And what a lot of wealthy organizations also did, you carried billions to the federal government. The community where your company is located got nothing. Your staff did not get any bonus, but you went to government so that the politicians will say, oh, this is you, and probably give you either tax holidays or keep you in their good books for Forex. All of that is different. Now, the point I'm making is that in giving money, those they call the most desperately poor, I'm not against it at all. I'm only saying, weigh all of this and be sure it's not money being thrown away.
Well, Dr. Okey, perhaps the point then would be not, just as you said, not whether or not we give money, but the manner in which it is giving. Now, you also talked about the SMEs and the role they could have played or government could have played in this, in incentivizing them just so that, they don't go under and then jobs are not completely lost. But in the absence of data, perhaps that is why, these organizations who made these donations had to go give them to central governments who expectedly would have some measure of reliable data with which to circulate things to people. So how do you respond to that? We do not have adequate data. You talked about SMIDAN the other time, but I'm not even sure that SMIDAN has sufficient data on the number of SMEs that are out there, because we understand that some 40 million of them or thereabout are even unregistered. So how does government come to intervene, in their case?
My comment is that the problem is a purely imaginary one. Yes, we don't have data as we plan as a nation. Let us suppose I have a bakery. I have a bakery somewhere in Surulere. Surulere has a local government chairman. The place where my bakery factory is seated is under a ward chairman, and there's a councillor in charge of that place, and there's a member of house, and there's a governor, etc., etc. Now, with or without data, as a baker who wants to help, I can meet with my councillor, meet with my ward chairman and say, look, in this ward, because of what's going on, and these are my primary customers, I want to distribute 200,000. Now, that's not a lot of money, but it's an indication of goodwill. I want to distribute 200,000, so let's agree how it will be done. That way, I'm activating the structures put in place for service delivery. You see, we are running public administration and governments at state, local government, and all other ward levels without the concept of service delivery as an essential component of leadership. We record budgets, we show how much we are spending, we'll tell you that last year we spent so and so on roads, this government, we are really doing a lot, Nigerians are not appreciating it. Please, we are not record keepers. I'm not interested in how many palm trees you climbed. I want to see the keg of palm wine, so I'll drink out of it. So because we no longer include the element of service delivery in our perception of public office and leadership, we jump around with these records, and so we have institutions that should deliver, they're not delivering. My take being that these companies, the fact that we don't have statistics does not remove the fact that there are some measure of statistics wherever you are. Intervene wherever you are. The media will come and cover it. The effect will be that others will be compelled to compete with you. Oh, really? Is that what it is? No. Are we the only... They are making us look bad. Let's do our...
That's okay. We need to go soon, but just quickly, do you see or do you think that possibilities of an extension of this lockdown could actually be there?
Not only is it possibility, it may turn out being mandatory because we don't have a correct record of infected persons. We are not testing enough people. They say they will test, is it 2,500 or 250 in 3 months? The truth of the matter is that the records create a deceptive impression of low infection rate. You saw the image, I think, 2 days ago of somebody who collapsed at an ATM machine in Lagos. The point to put on the table is that this easing of the lockdown should not be mistaken for an easing of the rate of infection or the continued activity and activism of the virus itself. It would be a mistake to assume that, but the possibility of a reversal. You saw what happened in Ghana. They eased off the thing and the infections quadrupled. The fear and possibility of that is real, and it's already manifesting in a few places. So it may have to happen. But I think the only way to contain it now is for actual activation of genuine sensitization. Let all the big men and women who are holding public office, who are now hiding in their houses, know that they were put in place to serve the people. Let communication extend up to that level. At what levels? By the time people are told the implications, the number of those who deliberately misbehave will reduce. That is governance. That is leadership. That's what is not happening. I think that's what needs to happen.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director of System Specs Academy, for your time this morning.